Thanks for tuning in to Vitality and Motion. Let this be a place to grow your mindset and prioritize movement. All audio is original with music and production support from Riverside as my editing platform. This podcast is for education and inspiration only, and any studies or products I mention are simply for context. Take what fits in your life and check in with your healthcare medical providers as you feel is necessary. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Vitality in Motion. I'm your host Maddie, and today we're joined by a special guest, Gabrielle. She's basically like my sister at this point. Her and my brother have been dating for like 9 years, and she's getting her PharmD degree, so Doctor of Pharmacy. And we're going to be talking about all things pharmacology and just kind of dive into her side of things. So without further ado, hello Gabby, what's up? How you doing? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, thanks, Maddie. I'm so excited to be on the podcast today. So that was a really nice introduction. But like Maddie said, my name's Gabrielle. I am a pharmacy student at the University of North Carolina, and I went to James Madison for undergrad.
Yep, a lot of Dukes on this podcast lately, so roll Dukes. Anyway, so we'll just go ahead and dive into the questions. The first one I have is what made you want to pursue pharmacy or become a pharmacist?
So I actually went to undergrad as a pre-med major. I wanted to be a physician. And so in order to kind of pursue that path, I was trying to find a job that or do something while I was in my undergraduate training that would help me with that career path. And so this is in the middle of COVID, and there wasn't like a lot of opportunities to be in the hospital. So I got a job at Walgreens Pharmacy. I noticed while I was there that I was really interested in like more of the medications and really understanding what they did. I realized that I was actually more invested in treating a problem than figuring out what it was, and seeing like how I could actually make the problem better. I really liked being on the side of like treatment.
Yeah, definitely. And that's how you figure it out, right? Is just going into the clinics or getting
Mhm.
real life experience. So I'm glad that you figured that out. So the next question we have is, what's your favorite drug to learn about and then why?
I would say that my favorite drugs right now is immunosuppressants, and that's more just because I'm currently really interested in a solid organ transplant for pharmacy practice. And so I think that those drugs are just super interesting, and it's kind of backwards to what a lot of us would think of. Like a lot of us are constantly looking for ways to boost our immune system. So in these patients that have received an organ transplant, they actually are doing the opposite. Like we're trying to suppress the immune system. And so learning a lot about the immune system and a lot of immunology is really interesting to me. I actually been really fortunate, and as a first year student, I got an internship at UNC to work with patients who receive solid organ transplants. Mainly, I work with kidney and liver recipients. And so I've had to learn a lot about immunosuppression, which is something that isn't as studied in my core curriculum. So it's just been a really cool thing to kind of get to do and to learn more about that I don't get to see as often in class.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Sorry, I'm blanking for a second. So why, okay, I know. Why does their immune system need to be repressed?
So just like any of us, when we get the flu or when we get any kind of thing that isn't supposed to be there, our immune systems are really, really good, and they can tell that there is like a mismatch as to what should be in your body and what shouldn't be. And so for any patient who receives an organ transplant, that is a foreign body to your immune system. And so your immune system needs to be tampered down so it doesn't then go ahead and attack that organ. The entire thing that we're trying to prevent is rejection or the loss of that organ because your immune system it's made to go against things that shouldn't be there. This is also really common when you see like autoimmune diseases. Basically, in an autoimmune disease, your body is thinking that something shouldn't be there when it really should. And so it's attacking its own body or its own system. That's why we also are having to kind of navigate that, especially I feel like there's more and more autoimmune diseases that are coming out in 2026.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes more sense. Thank you
Mhm.
for clearing that up. So now on the opposite spectrum, what's your least favorite drug or drugs to learn about and why?
Yeah, so this was a little bit of a harder question for me. It's kind of hard to say like what's my least favorite drug, but I will say that something that I just kind of like gets under my skin. A couple years ago, the FDA had come out and they had said that there's a drug that's very common in like all of our cold and flu medicines over the counter. It's called phenylephrine. Phenylephrine can be used for like a lot of different things on the inpatient side, but more when you're talking about cold medicine, they were using it for like a decongestant, and they basically had just come out and said, there's just no evidence here, like it's not really doing anything for you. So the
Mm,
one thing that does kind of bother me is if I go to any pharmacy, it hasn't really been like removed from any product. So when you're kind of like looking at your box of cold medicine, if you look on the back of the box, it's probably still there. But you're basically just taking something that the FDA has kind of said is just not really doing anything for you. So
right.
that's like a little bug.
It's a little ick in the pharmacy
Yeah.
world. Okay. And I'm sure like it takes time for everyone to kind of catch up with what the FDA is saying, especially if they have a bunch of products on shelf and they don't necessarily expire. They'll probably just keep them there until they run out. Anyway, okay. Next question is, what is a supplement or medication combo that worries you? Maybe something that you see trending that a lot of people are taking that you're like, maybe not the best.
Yeah, so I actually feel like you did a really good job in your first episode talking about supplements, and when you described a lot about making sure that the supplements you're taking are verified and that they're pure. That's a really important thing. So just verifying that the places you're getting your supplements from are accountable and making sure that they are actually telling you what's in the products. But some other things that I think about when it comes to supplements and medications in general, supplements they're not actually used to treat anything because they're not FDA approved. Like we're not allowed to actually say like this supplement is going to treat this disease.
Hmm.
But if you think about it, something that worries me is a lot of people use supplements because they're trying to treat something. Like maybe they're
Hmm.
not doing it based on like what the FDA would say, but they're saying like, "Oh, I have a cold. I'm gonna try this for my cold."
Hmm.
And I think where we get really tricky with using supplements is that if you're using them and you're using them for things that you don't actually need, like there can be a really big issue there. Same with, I would never want anybody to take a medication that they don't need. And so, especially when it comes to like your electrolytes, I'd be really concerned if somebody was taking a lot of potassium and they shouldn't be taking potassium because that could be really dangerous for their heart. I feel would be a good kind of way to go about it is to really see what your body needs supplemented. Like if you
Hmm.
actually went and got your labs done and you can see like I have a deficiency in this area, and then it would be a really good thing to use a supplement for that. Your body is literally the ultimate fighting machine. Your body is the number one thing in this world that every single day is fighting to survive. So I think
Hmm.
I just have a little bit of concerns of people just taking all these things that their body doesn't actually need.
That makes total sense. And I mean, I took a got a test done. I submitted a stool sample and I feel like
Hmm.
that gave me a good basis of what my body was truly lacking. And then I take the supplements they recommended based off of that. I feel like a lot of the times we just see stuff on Instagram and it's like, oh, you need this because this, and this reason. But in reality, it's just their marketing tactic to get you to buy their product. So I definitely think you have to be conscious and do your research and not just take stuff blindly just because. And I mean, the whole point of a supplement is to supplement, like you were saying.
Hmm.
It's not supposed to be something that's treating an issue. Now, sure, it may help certain things, and that's great. So glad we're on the same wavelength there.
I think something else I wanted to bring up
Yeah,
just
go for it.
from like a pharmacist perspective too is supplements actually have a ton of interactions with each other, but then also
Mhm.
with a lot of the medications that you're taking. It's something that you might not really realize because if you can get over the counter, like not something you need a prescription for, you might not think about that this could have like a major interaction with something I'm taking. Most of the time, your doctors and pharmacists or whoever is prescribing for you, they probably say like, hey, this medication has a lot of interactions, but it's not something you think about so much when you're taking supplements. Like you don't
Mhm.
really think to say, oh, this supplement could have an interaction with another supplement. And
Right.
so I think making sure that what you're taking, anytime you take anything and put it in your body, that you're verifying that that is a safe thing to take. And if you ever need pharmacists, we are the best at going and just doing a quick little interaction checker for you. So.
Yeah, definitely. I actually, one of the podcast episodes I did with my friend Marley, we were talking about that. And she's like, I never consult my pharmacist. And I was like, they're the experts in drugs. We should ask our pharmacist more about interaction with drugs or supplements, especially if we're taking an antibiotic or whatever. I feel like the doctors have gotten better about asking what supplements we're taking, but at the same time, it's always better to just check in and see what the reactions are so you're not, not getting benefit from something because of something else you're taking. So,
That also brings up a really good point. When your doctor asks you like what all you're taking, make sure that you're including supplements in that list because
mhm.
for this exact thing we're saying about like there being interactions between supplements, I know it might be like, well, I have like, a laundry list of supplements I'm taking. And if that is you, just making sure that you're letting your prescribers know everything you're taking so that what they're prescribing to you is safe based on all the things you take.
Definitely, definitely a good point to share for sure.
I also just wanted to bring up like a pretty common medication interaction that I see that I think like the general public is just something I would want everybody to be aware of. If you take any kind of blood pressure medication, a very common interaction that a lot of people don't know about is taking non-steroidals or like ibuprofen, naproxen, those kinds of things with blood pressure medications, specifically ones that end in like pril, so like lisinopril, valsartan, or losartan. Those ones, the ones that are end in artan. Those
Mhm.
medications, especially if you're also taking a medication called hydrochlorothiazide or any kind of diuretic, we call that in pharmacy world the triple whammy, those kinds of three together. And it's
Mhm.
pretty dangerous for your kidney health. And so just making sure that if you're taking any blood pressure medications, that you're checking in with a doctor or pharmacist before you take any kind of non-steroidal over the counter.
So triple whammy. Could you repeat those three?
ACE inhibitor or ARB, which would be like lisinopril or losartan. Those are just like examples of those with ibuprofen, which is a NSAID, and then with hydrochlorothiazide, which is a common diuretic.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Yeah, definitely keep a lookout, people, if you're on blood pressure medication. Okay, what's a common mistake that people make when taking medications?
I think something that I see is just incorrect administration and timing. Every medication kind of is different in how you should be taking it. Like there are medications where it doesn't matter what time of day or doesn't matter if you take it in the morning or night or if you're, for the most part, you kind of want to be consistent when you're taking medications, but there are other ones that it's super important that you take it with the correct administration. So there's some that are saying you must take it with food. There's weird ones where you have to take it with a very specific amount of ounces of fluid and stay upright
Mhm.
for 30 minutes after. And just making sure that you're taking things appropriately and how you should be taking them for their best efficacy. Something I've actually seen is a lot of people don't know that there are certain medications that you have to take on their own. Really common one is like levothyroxine. That
Mhm.
medication you're supposed to take like first thing in the morning on an empty stomach without any other medications. And it can kind of like mess with how the absorption is for that drug. Just like as an example, I do
Gotcha.
want to make sure I say don't start taking your medications correctly because we do kind of base certain things off of how you're taking it. So making sure that if you're like, oh, I don't take this med right, that you're kind of letting your doctors know that you're going to start taking it a different way.
That makes sense. So, if anything, you want to follow what the drug says from the get-go, but if you're not, then check in with your pharmacist or your doctor before you decide to switch it up. And all right, so the next question is, I guess that kind of feeds into it, how important it
Mhm.
is for you to take your medication around the same time every day? Or again, does it just depend on the drug?
Yeah, so it definitely just depends on which one. There's some that are like less important than others, but for some patients who, let's say, like they have gotten like a kidney or liver transplant, it's super important that they take their medications at the same time. But there's other disease states or other medications where it's not as big of a deal as it is with others.
Okay, good to know. All right, and then what is the biggest misconception you see about pharmacists or just the pharmacy field in general?
So I feel like the biggest misconception around my profession as a student pharmacist is just that pharmacists are kind of like pill counters and that our job is just to dispense medication. And I think actually this was like the biggest shock to me when I became a pharmacy student is how many things I can do with my degree that I never even imagined. I didn't really even know that there were clinical pharmacists who work in the hospital or that, I mean, there's pharmacists who work for drug companies or insurance companies or ones who are clinical researchers. Like there's just so many things that you can do with a pharmacy degree that doesn't always have to be like what you would imagine a pharmacist doing. but not to, discount our retail pharmacists because they're super important and we love them too. And then the other thing that I think is a misconception is that pharmacists are really pro medication. And I feel like almost every pharmacist that I've met is really, really good at like de-prescribing and figuring
Mm.
out what medications you need versus ones you don't need. I think we're probably really well equipped to kind of like optimize your medications to get you on the right things that you actually do need. And I feel like a lot of pharmacists, we want you to be on the least amount possible. Like we don't want you to have a really long drug list because we know that comes with side effects and interactions.
I mean, that makes total sense. I feel like you do get a stigma of if you're a pharmacist, you are the people that like want you to be on all these drugs, but that's not the case for everybody. And there's so many different outlets, and I feel like you've definitely found that. So it's awesome to see you grow and, organ transplant and whatever comes next for you. And yeah, you gotta advocate for yourself. So thanks for sharing that. Leading into the next question, what's something that surprised you about certain medications or just anything in general that you found?
Something that I think definitely surprised me is how dangerous over-the-counter medications can be. I just talked about with taking like NSAIDs, like ibuprofen, that can really hurt, especially your kidney health. And I feel like when you see something that's over the counter, we just automatically assume that if you don't need a prescription for it, then it's completely safe. Anytime that you're taking anything, there are risks you don't always see. And so it's just been really interesting to learn about over-the-counter medications and just knowing kind of like when to take them, how to take them, and that you really should be still consulting people before you just take anything over the counter or mix products because it's still like a medication, even though it's not a prescription.
Do you want to give us some examples so people can kind of be aware of stuff to look out for when they're shopping for medications or when they're sick?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in my like pharmacist heart, something that kind of bothers me too is if you look at especially cold and flu products, a lot of times in on the box it will have like multiple ingredients in it. So it'll say like it has like Tylenol plus like a cough suppressant plus all these things, and those can be a little bit dangerous because if you're taking that, you're thinking, oh, I'm taking one pill, and then maybe you're gonna go and take something else. So like, oh well. I also need Tylenol. What you're
Mm.
not realizing is there's already Tylenol in that box. And so you might be getting more than is like a normal dose. And so I do like picking boxes that have one ingredient so you know exactly what you're taking. And if you need to make your own combination of, I need a cough suppressant and I need Tylenol, at least you're being able to follow what dose am I taking, and making sure that everything is kind of safe.
That makes sense. So it's definitely something to just be aware of and look for when you're, shopping for medications. Okay. Next question is, what are your next steps after you graduate, after you do residency?
So I think right now I'm interested in pursuing a residency. If you want to go into more of a clinical field, then you would probably do residency. It's not a requirement, but it's something I think I'm interested in. And I'm not really sure where because the match doesn't really, I don't really have like
Mhm.
a ton of say in that. But yeah, so I'd like to pursue a residency. And I am interested in long-term working in solid organ transplant, but obviously I'm really open to a lot of things. I'm also taking a class this semester for the first time in critical care pharmacy. So pharmacists who work in like an ICU setting, and that's super interesting. So I definitely have like a bunch of things that I'm interested in still, but yeah, we'll kind of see where it all goes, I guess.
I feel like emergency medicine and pharmacy would be really interesting. And I feel like collabing with doctors and even physical therapists, like having everybody in one spot is just ultimate best kind of care that you can receive so that you're all kind of giving your 2 cents. Even like OT, I mean, all of the professions, nurses. So
I completely agree. I think my favorite things I've seen are really multidisciplinary teams where you kind of can see all the different perspectives. And I once was in like a multidisciplinary clinic for one of my rotations, and it was one of the first times that I really got to work with everyone's like social work, OT, PT, physician, pharmacist, nutrition, nursing. There was just so many different specialties there, and we all kind of like brought so much to the table in showing how to best take care of this patient in my expertise. And I
mm,
feel like you just are so valued when you're on those multidisciplinary teams because where somebody doesn't know, like the other person kind of fills in that gap. And I don't know, it's been super special. And it's been really cool, especially like
yeah.
with you and me,
Mhm.
being able to kind of talk through things from our different perspectives.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like we can kind of tag team each other with like certain things. And I feel like they're really trying to, at least for me when I'm in school right now, they're really trying to encourage us to take that route. So I love to see that, and hopefully that'll continue to grow. Last little question here. Any final thoughts? If I guess people could take one thing away from this, what would it be? Anything else you want to share?
Yeah, so obviously I have to advocate for my profession a little bit, but my one takeaway would be to consult your pharmacist. And if I could say that in all caps, I would. My reason in saying that is I think my favorite thing about my profession and something that I just absolutely loved when I was kind of deciding what career path to go down was just the accessibility of pharmacists. There's probably a pharmacist within some distance from your house. It's like super close because
Mhm.
we think about pharmacists like in your grocery stores, in your Walgreens, CVS, like there's just so many out there, and we all went to school for this like to help you making sure that you're taking the right medications and that we're giving you the best education to be able to take things safely and to feel confident in what you're taking. And so if you have anything that you're like, I don't know that I should be taking this, or I don't know if these two medications interact. Every time you go pick up something over the counter, just go quickly stop and ask your pharmacist because I know that they're very busy, but I think that like that's what we went to school for. Like that's what kind of fills our cup is being able to help you and make sure that you feel well educated on what you're taking.
Definitely, definitely. And what you don't know, you don't know. So it doesn't hurt to ask. And like you said, you guys are right there, especially if you're in a CVS or Walgreens, you're pretty accessible. You may have to wait in line, but it might be worth it so that you're not, taking a drug that might not be the best idea. Or they could maybe suggest other drugs that would be better. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your little tidbit about pharmacy. And I wish you luck in the remainder of, I'm acting like I'm not going to see you anytime soon. You're almost there. You're almost done.
Yeah.
It's been a long haul.
Just to plug pharmacy school, for a lot of people, it's like an 8-year degree. So you do 4 years of undergrad and then 4 years of graduate level. There are programs that kind of let you do that a little bit differently. Like there are some that are 2+4. And so you do 2 years of like your prerequisites, and then you could go straight in to pharmacy school and get it done in 6 years. In the past, that you could get a degree that was not a doctor of pharmacy. And so I think that's where some people still are a little surprised when you say, like, this is a doctorate level degree. But in North Carolina, we have this collaborative practice agreement, and collaborative practice agreements aren't only in North Carolina. There's a lot of states that do it. So basically, we have this extra title you can get if you'd like to. That's called CPP, which is a clinical pharmacist practitioner. And it's very similar to what you would think of with like maybe like an NP or a PA. So these pharmacists are able to kind of see patients independently, prescribe, but it's under a collaborative practice agreement with a physician. And
Gotcha.
so basically, you are able to prescribe under a supervising physician. And like I said, this is just that North Carolina has an actual title for that, which is like CPP, but there are other states that also allow you to have collaborative practice agreements.
Awesome. Well, either way, bottom line is you are going to be PharmD, Doctor of Pharmacy. I get the
Hmm.
same thing with PT. I don't think people realize that it is a doctorate degree. I
Hmm.
think honestly, it just really helps all of, like, we were going back to the collaboration of all the professions and just like bringing in our expertise because we do have to go through, similar schooling. I mean, obviously, we're all learning a bunch of different things, but in order to maximize patient care and help our patients to the best of our abilities. We've got that background. We're here to help. So, yeah. Anyways, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate your time and energy you took into researching the question. Well, you probably didn't have to research much. You got all that in your brain. But yeah, I appreciate it, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.